And Jenny, I oftentimes would pull off.
Just have her name.
Good morning, everyone. I'll call the Cook County Board of Commissioners regular meeting to order on this day of February 25th at 8:30 a.m. We start our meeting with the pledge, so please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
I would like to pull something on the consent agenda. Am I premature in asking this? Okay, then never mind. We're giving time to
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So at this time, we go into a public comment period. And I would ask anyone in the audience who would like to come forward to give their opinion, request for 5 minutes.
Okay.
Please sign in and tell us your name.
Steve Watson. I'm not even exactly sure what I want to talk about, but I am going to talk about a few things. So here's a scripture verse. You might not be Christian. That doesn't matter to me. Under poor leadership, the people groan. And I would say that is been what I would consider the board's thing is very poor leadership. And so, you know, I came here a couple times, and I've came 4 other times and haven't been able to speak. But the first day was the first day that I found out that Yorkie was actually took a leave of absence before he even resigned, and I talked to you about the administrator position. The second time I came, I talked to you about wages and having too many people on the payroll, and that is your responsibility. So, you know, then it comes out in the paper that when you did the, when you raised everybody's wages, which I'm happy for them, okay? That's a good thing, except you're taking from your neighbors to pay them. You know, you aren't making the money, you're sending a bill to everybody. And all those wages, you know, you raised, you compared to Hennepin County. Hennepin County is Minneapolis. They probably have more businesses on their tax rolls than we have people. We don't compare to Hennepin County at all. Do they have 90% public property? How many people are in their levy to pay? You know, it's like, and I think Scott County has Minnetonka, Lake Minnetonka, every property around there is over $1 million. Yeah, you have some $1 million properties down on the lake, but not even close to what that place, Chanhassen. So, you know, to me, so here you deceived the public and you voted yes. So I would say it's your 5 responsibility to fix it. And I would suggest that the only way I can think that you could fix it is to freeze hiring and wages for 10 or 12 years. You can't get a raise until you get to what's right. And that you guys, instead of hiring somebody to do your work, you guys figure out what the real wages should be for Cook County. And you know, I consider you like the opposite of Robin Hood. You steal from the poor and give to the rich. And that's your legacy. When you vote yes, you're responsible for that. I have no confidence in you choosing a good administrator because you've only had 3 administrators. 1 died and 2 were rotten for the people who own property. Terrible. Bad leadership. poor decisions. Your premise when you raised wages was based on this. So I have a scientific background. You have a theorem, you do a test on it, and you check it to see if it's true. Your premise was that if we don't raise wages, we won't get good people. There's lots of good people in Cook County. That was a false premise, and instead of, did any of you do due diligence on, your job actually to check out what this company did when you raised everybody's wages? Did any of you do any research on that and find out what they did?
I'll give you one more minute.
Okay. It's you're responsible. Your yes is, and now I'm going to talk about the government, what's happening. Okay? God always works from the top down. So what the government is cutting people and the budget. It's going to come to the state and it's going to come here. So you need to already start planning that you're not going to have as much money and that you need to cut back and cut. You've got 37 people on the payroll in public health alone. That's, somebody had to say yes to get that done. My suggestion is about this administrator position as you go through, that you have to actually have 2/3 majority to hire one of them, which would mean 4 out of 5 instead of 3 out of 5, because the 3 of you railroad most things through, as from my perspective. Thanks for your time.
Anyone else? Thank you. Smile.
Thank you.
Been busy? Thank you.
We can share. I have one.
Hi, I'm Judy Matschbacher. I live in Lutzen, lived here over 50 years. And I would like to have you approach this with an open mind, give it some consideration, and I think it's a possibility. I own this building that's on the front of your packet in Lutzen, 2.5 miles up the Caribou Trail. It's 100 by 100 precast concrete building. It's been there since 1976. It's an old manufacturing building. It's in place, been maintained and kept up. And I think this could be utilized. I think this could be utilized and repurposed and put into service as this transfer station, not to the tune of $8.5 million, but probably under 4, which apparently there's already 3 in place with grant money. So this is, the first picture is the building, what it offers. The second picture is the interior, and this, basically, it's a mezzanine around the entire 3 sides of the perimeter. There's one side of the building that was engineered and structured so that it could be detached and expand the entire building to whatever size you need and want. The company who built this building is still in business and would work with you and at least tell you whether it was feasible to consider as a transfer station. If they looked at the blueprints, I think they could give you a good estimate. The infrastructure's in, it's ready to go. Could cut down your time frame considerably. On the third page, I list some of the positives for it. It's a 2-acre site, zoned light business development area. There's an additional 16 acres available as a buffer or to utilize for the building. It has the expansion wall. It has a loading dock, a drive-in door for vehicles, mezzanine on 3 sides of the building, 3-phase power is in place, internet's in place. There's an office, an apartment. The time frame would be improved. You probably could be in this structure by the end of the year, because it's precast concrete walls that could be moved in by this company that's in business and builds big buildings all the time. I would offer Cook County owner financing, short time frame, and get it structured so there would be no need to go out and do bonding and bear that expense. The tariffs are coming. That's a big unknown. I doubt that this is going to be put in place for $8.5 million. I predict 25% more. That's just my take on it. I believe in recycling, reusing, repurposing. And I think IRRB would step forward and put this back into service as an industrial building with more money. I think this could be done with costing the taxpayers very little. You could skip the sanitation, solid waste, service district, and levy what's needed. And our price is $799,000, and we would do that with owner financing. We own it outright. So I'd ask that you consider it, not just blow it off. I know you're down the road a piece, but you can change course and go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Did you sign in, please, on the,
Right.
yeah. Okay. Anybody else? So we have the consent agenda items here. We had an addition late afternoon yesterday on higher ed. And we have put together a letter, but I did invite Karen to just give a little overview of the support that she's asked for the county. Commissioner Sullivan?
So, Madam Chair, the letter of support is a separate item after the consent, so I think we should address the consent agenda first.
We'll do that first. Okay. We don't have many items on the consent agenda, but Commissioner White, you had a
I'd
question?
like to poll or discuss number C.
Okay, we can do that later, toward the end of the meeting?
Sure.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Same sign. Okay. So Karen is going to just give a brief overview of what community education means for us in the community and for us as a county to support.
Thank you. Thanks, and thank you so much for taking this request so quickly. It came up quickly. I don't know how many of you know, but about a week ago, I was contacted by the chair of the House Higher Ed Policy Committee and asked to come down and say who we are, what we do, and why they support us. And so you can imagine that was a little alarming. The first email said something like, given the upcoming budget, we're looking at everything. The state of Minnesota, through its higher ed budget, supports Cook County higher education with $300,000 a year. That is about 60 to 70% of our budget. So losing that money would be devastating. I don't think we are in danger of that. What I have found out since then, and the reason that I waited so long to ask for a letter of support, is we weren't really sure what was happening, and we didn't want to And we wanted the letters to be structured in such a way that they supported what we were going to talk about. And so what we have found out is every nonprofit that has a budget line is being asked to submit all of their financials for the last 3 years, including salaries and salaries of staff and any money that the board members receive. Also, supporting documentation about how much we get from other people and how much support we have in the community. So we were able to turn that around really quickly. Our board members don't get any money. Our salaries are very modest. And we do have the lobbyists that the chamber hires that will speak on our behalf and has gone around and spoken to people that are on this committee. And they said, yeah, everything that we see from Cook County Higher Education is great. Everything seems in line. There's no, it all looks good. We're not talking about you. And so I will be going down there on Monday and Tuesday to testify before the committee on Tuesday and meet with some of the legislators on Monday afternoon and Tuesday morning. Kelsey will be coming with me, and so will Rob Wells, who is a student in the community who's taken advantage of our services and changed his career. So I would like to go with a handful of letters of support, and so that's why I asked the county, and I've also asked several of your department heads for this as well, people that we've done customized training with, and especially Grace in Public Health and Human Services. We've done so much work with that part of your business. Cook County Higher Education works with you to save you money. We offer free, as you can see on this piece of paper, you probably didn't have a lot of time to read through it, but here are some of the things recently. We provided this free CDL training to Cook County residents, and the Cook County Highway Department hired 3 of our graduates. We co-host events regularly with Public Health and Human Services, and we provide all the event support. So if it's a public event, we advertise it, we do the registration, we have the space, we support it with all of our technology. You can see some of the speakers and presenters, and sometimes we share the costs of it. Just depends. We're always open to that. Cook County uses our space for the Prevention Coalition and the Food Access Coalition meetings. Restorative justice is in our building also. That's not really associated with you, but tangentially. We provide customized training for your departments. For the, we had Excel, we have CPR, we're doing OSHA training with the Highway Department. We have provided tuition scholarships and student support for your staff to attend long-distance post-secondary education so that they are better educated individuals that work for you. And we partner often with the Extension, Minnesota Extension and the Community Center for Naturalists events or masters events. So I think we're good value. You do give us $15,000 a year, the money that we get from Public Health and Human Services grant. What's the official name of that? The grants that they give out through community grants, I think. Mm-hmm. We do get that every year, and we use that money to underwrite our events so that all of our events since COVID happened are free to the public. So we use that to help pay for our events and support our events. So that's my ask, and I would appreciate your support and be able to go down there and say we've got the support of the county board. I think that would have a lot of weight.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Sullivan?
I'd just like to comment, I want to thank Cook County Higher Ed for all that you do, not only for government here in Cook County, but for our entire community. And recently, a number of commissioners were at our community leadership meeting, and Kelsey Kennedy was there to talk about your upcoming visit. Obviously, you know, your ask was not at that meeting, but I think it's really significant, the work that you do. And I would like to make a motion that we approve sending a letter of support for Cook County Higher Ed.
Support.
Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you getting me in so quickly.
Thank you.
Well, this morning we have a couple of public hearings, so we'll work things in between everything else. So I'll go maybe to Brady. Could you fill us in kind of briefly on the changes in the county fee schedule.
The Highway Department is asking for 2 changes. They've had a sign fee that just states cost plus 20%. So now they defined it more clearly in their policy to be the entire sign assembly, including all the posts, putting it together, and the labor, et cetera, at $600. So they're asking for that. It's in their current policy, so it would match the policy. And the second change is for an applicator fee. And what they train applicators for pest, what do they call it?
Yeah, it's pesticide.
It's pesticide primarily. And so they're training the people that come to your house, and it could be companies, it could be individuals. And so they have 2 people who are trained in that right now. And they have 6 scheduled for the upcoming season, and they'd like to have a fee for that at $60 per person and for each category. So it could be as much as $180 depending on the categories. And then the final of the auditor's office are liquor licenses. We haven't changed those fees in over 10 years, in the 10 to 15-year range. And I've given you in your packet some examples from other counties, what they charge: St. Louis, Todd, Aiken, Stearns, Douglas. This is what they had on their websites: Chisago, Olmsted, Hubbard, and Goodhue. And you can see the ranges for the on-sale wine, the Sunday sales, on-sale liquor, off-sale beer, strong beer, off-sale liquor. There are 2 that have a legal maximum. Sunday liquor is can be no higher than $200 anywhere in the state, and off-sale liquor has a legal maximum of $800. The others do not have legal maximums. So there are many, many options. Bev in my office, the 2 of us looked at this and came to a conclusion, kind of a moderate increase of on-sale wine going from $302.50 to $500. On-sale strong beer from $121 to $150. Sunday sales going from $121 to the $200 maximum. On-sale liquor from $1,815 to $2,200. Off-sale beer from $60.50 to $80. Off-sale liquor from leaving that one alone, $500. You can see that the current licenses we issue are 59 in those various categories. The change from the current schedule to that option 1 schedule would raise the total fees from $30,770 to $38,810. Below that, you see our seasonal list, because there are some that are only asking for these licenses when they're open in the summer seasons. And these are for 6 months of the year, and so the fees we proposed here are exactly half of what you see for the annual licenses. And you see there, we would raise another $456 per year. So that's just one option, and that's you may approve that today, what we suggest, or you may want to think about it, because it's and you may want to consider other options. But those are the requests today. But you have to have the public hearing before you approve anything.
Any thoughts on this? Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Brady. One question I have is, what was the rationale that selected the counties that we use as comparison?
They had it on their website.
Okay, so it's basically convenient of access to
It
get
was,
that information?
it was convenient. I picked some that were of different size counties. I wanted to get Douglas because they're similar to us in the tourist
Yeah.
economy. But as you can see, just from the sampling, there isn't any clear rhyme or reason. I remember when there was lots of talk when counties were changing fees, and there was lots of sharing of information. I haven't seen that at all in this last 10-plus years. People are going their own directions, and there isn't a lot of collaboration on these fee changes as there used to be. So we're really just taking we could take a closer look. Someone suggested yesterday that we look at the counties that we based our compensation study on as another option. Board may have other options as to who they want to look at for comparisons. But to get good current information, then I should go speak to each county specifically on each one of these, because even the ones we picked on the website, some of them were a couple of years old, 3 years old. So if you want, we could do a more in-depth, but I'd want to know which counties you guys want to look at, for example.
Continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and I would just say just a matter of practice, when we make proposals, if our proposal coming to the community is simply to say we haven't changed these in 10 years, so we're going to change them, then it makes sense that things should be revisited. But I would encourage that the basis that informs our decision is well-reasoned, so that we demonstrate to the community that this is the basis on what we're doing that. And hopefully people then see that we're doing our due diligence and trying to be as equitable and fair as we can in this. And so that's just my observation. That's why I asked the question about who are we comparing to. And my recommendation would be that we would do as similar as we can in similar demographics relative to tourists, things like that in our comparison, so that anything that we use to inform ourselves as decision makers is credible and so. But I appreciate the information. I looked at it from an average, if we took the average over those comparable counties, but that's on a premise that those counties are rightly related to us. So my recommendation is that we make sure that we get as similar as we can, and then look at how that works out. And then I think it puts us in a position to be better, to support a decision. Thank you.
Any other thoughts, comments? Commissioner White?
It would behoove us to have Brady get some more current numbers from like-sized counties. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how this impacts a retailer from selling. Like, I have no idea what liquor sales are for individual establishments or anything like that. So I don't know how to direct you, except we need to have current information, and maybe somebody knows more. I know, so there's people that know more than I do about the liquor sales and how that goes. And maybe the city could help with some guidance on who would be the best comparable counties. I don't know. But I do believe we need to have more current information, and for the process, we need time to think about this, so I believe a decision should not be made today, but in an upcoming meeting anyway.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to hear from all commissioners is what you think is important as far as the size of county versus similarities in tourism, but there may be other factors too. like certainly around the Brainerd area, you'd say is more similar to us than other counties. Lake County, of course, just down the road. Northern counties, any sense of direction from others?
Commissioner Sullivan?
Surely. Well, I appreciate the information that you have gathered. It is very difficult, although I haven't researched liquor as an example. I have tried to gather information from other counties, and it's like pulling teeth. And I appreciate you going to the websites and trying to find as accurate and up-to-date information. But it's very time-consuming, and that is a cost when you are, doing that research. One of the things I do agree with is looking at the size, similarities, tourism, and Douglas County is frequently a county that I do look at, and so I think some of the choices that you've selected are very, very appropriate, and I would support, looking at these fee changes today. I think they're very reasonable.
When you drive through Two Harbors, you see this brand-new big liquor store there, and I can't imagine they're not going to keep prices low either. So maybe a county like Lake and Aiken and something that would be comparable to us would be helpful. Articles that I read in the paper also is that there's different likes of liquor these days, and more are going to the non-alcoholic, and beer seems like the craft beer, and we don't, that might be a consideration too, but maybe more similar size counties would be helpful. Commissioner White?
Who consumes more alcohol in our county, tourists or locals? Just a question, I don't really care, but who, by sales, is it, maybe that would be some way to decide which counties to choose, because if they have a high tourist population and tourists purchase a great percentage of the sales, then maybe we should decide the counties by receipts.
Commissioner Sullivan?
I don't know that there's any way to track how liquor sales are between residents and non-residents. There is no way to track that.
You're right.
And we also need to keep in mind the difference between a municipal liquor store and the county fees that Brady is talking about. We don't want to go to communities that have a city municipal liquor store when we're looking at county fees. So I support the communities that you've already looked at.
Yeah, most of these are resorts, et cetera, restaurants, et cetera, that sell alcohol. It's probably the resort.
Commissioner Mills?
Yeah, I would probably lean towards communities that have the highest rate of tourism. I think that's a good way to go. I don't know how many we want to look at, but I'm absolutely certain that that is the primary driver of liquor sales, both on and off sale in our community. The fees are nothing to sneeze at, but it's, for example, the on sale, liquor for a bar is $2,200. If that's what we go to, currently it's $1,800. Versus off sale is for just beer, it's $60 to $80. That's a lot easier to incorporate into a business model. But I know that revenues for on sale are quite high with the bars in our community too. So, like I said, it's nothing to sneeze at. It's not nothing, but I'm confident that the businesses can absorb it. But I agree with Commissioner Gamble that it'd be really good to have a stronger rationale as to how we determine it. And I think both Commissioner White and I guess all of us probably are talking about tourism communities, so that makes a lot of sense to me. Brainerd Lakes makes sense. I don't know the best way to determine that metric.
Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just to say that, the due diligence part of it is, in some of these instances, based upon the figures we look at, we've got 65% increases So, as a business that's seeing impacts on multiple levels, and we know we're going down, to the legislature right now because of impacts on us when change takes place. So I'm just saying, we want to do our due diligence.
Any other comments? So Brady, we have given you good directions,
Yes, it's helped, yes.
and then we'll table this until we hear from you further.
Ooh, I guess we'll have to set another hearing for it.
I'll come back to you when I have information.
Okay. Sometime later in March, I imagine.
So do we need to have a motion to table?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to table.
I support.
Any further comments or questions?
Uh,
To clarify, are you going to approve the highways fees?
Yeah, independent, those
Yeah,
those
there's,
3 items.
right.
Right.
So there's still the highway fee questions.
What is the intention of the motion? Was it, I assume,
Just
just for
to
liquor?
table that item.
Yep, just those fees. That was
Right.
my,
So, Madam Chair, then, if what we're looking for the board, based upon Brady's presentation and the request that's coming from the Highway Department, we would make a motion to support the Highway Department's request, and we would table the item relative to liquor licenses.
Right.
I think we need to have a public hearing before we can change the
Yeah,
other
so
one, so
public hearing
just,
hasn't taken.
yeah, so we can table we can just take it off now, the
Right.
liquor, and then do what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay. So we had a motion and a second.
Mhm.
Okay, all in favor?
Right?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. So it's a little bit after 9. So Brady, I'll turn that over to you then for
Yes.
the public hearing.
Yes, so this is a public hearing to consider changes to our county fee schedule. And right now, we have 2 fees to consider, both for the highway department, a sign assembly fee of $600 and a $60 application fee. And we'll take comments.
I do not hear any comments or see anybody to comment.
So should we close the public
We can
hearing and
close
then
the public
take a
hearing
vote?
then. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Right?
Opposed, same sign. So we agree that we've done all this for the highway, and we're going to wait on Brady to come back to us with the liquor information. Okay.
So, Madam Chair, I think we need to make a vote on the highway projects. I made the motion to close the public hearing.
Okay. Then we'll make a motion on the highway request, set a fee of $60 for the pesticide applicator, and the roadside assembly, the fee up to $600. Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I would make a motion to support the Highway Department's request, those 2 fees.
And I'll second that motion.
Any further questions or comments on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. We have another public hearing at 10 o'clock, but in between all of this, I wonder if Neva would be available. She's in the audience there to move on to land services. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi.
So I have 3 items for your attention today. The first 2 are from the Cook County Planning Commission earlier this month. These are proposed amendments to the Cook County Wind Energy Conversion Systems Ordinance. For those of you unfamiliar with what this ordinance does, It has the purpose to provide a balanced regulatory framework for the placement and operation of wind energy towers in Cook County. Historically, this ordinance was nested under the tower ordinance, and those were separated around the 2010s era. The changes proposed in this ordinance were identified as staff to add clarity to our regulatory expectations. When we were having a resident reach out to us wanting to put up a little windmill on their property, the way we read through this ordinance made it sound like the requirements for a residential wind tower were the same requirements as like a large commercial wind energy system. So as staff, we were reading through and very perplexed by some of the language that seemed rather conflicting and frankly unnecessary for regular residents. So we put together some proposed changes that we feel adds a lot more clarity and makes it much more reasonable for a regular resident to put up a windmill on their property. And we put those changes forward for public comment. We received no written comments from the public nor at the public hearing. And the Planning Commission went through those proposed changes and recommended unanimous approval of those proposed changes before you today.
Any comments or questions? Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah. Reading through the documentation, I would just like to applaud the whole process and the narrative that informs investing in changing in any ordinance or law or whatever else, that the public wants to know the rationale, the thought behind it, and what informs the decision. And I think that the discipline that's involved in that process, I was very impressed, and I appreciated the narrative that supported the recommendations. And for all of those that pay attention and look at changes, it's like we just discussed. We want to see integrity in process, well-informed decisions, and it's easier to get behind those. So I certainly, are we looking for a motion?
You want a motion on all these
To support,
to support?
yeah.
Yes.
So, Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to adopt the proposed amendments to the Cook County zoning ordinance number 37 as recommended by the Cook County Planning Commission at their February 12th, 2025 meeting, with two modifications to sections 2.09 and 2.72 as recommended by staff.
Support.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Oh.
Madam Chair, I believe that this is the wind energy conversion, which is ordinance number 63. Would you like to amend your
Sure.
motion?
Thank you, Commissioner.
I
Amendment
appreciate that
supported.
motion,
Yeah.
but we'll get to that.
So we have an amended motion.
And I'll support.
Any further questions or comments?
I'd just like to say that on behalf of the Planning Commission, NEVA does a very, very thorough job of reviewing ordinance work. And I think the critical pieces are that they're clear and understandable to the public. Things are reasonable, and I really appreciate that.
Any other questions or comments? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And then, as Commissioner Gamble alluded, we have a second set of ordinance. This one is a little bit more complex. The joy of bringing items to you at this stage of the process is there's a little history behind how it got to you. So I'm going to try to give you a general overview without getting too mucked into details, because I know you have a lot of business today. So these items in the Cook County zoning ordinance were assembled by staff on a few different issues. Primarily, the proposed changes were to add clarity, again, some illustrations to help landowners and people looking over this ordinance understand what a bluff is and how we measure that. Some of the other changes were to relax our requirements for accessory structures in certain zone districts, relax the RV permitting in certain zone districts under certain requirements, and to clarify the permitting requirements of solar panels, tiny homes, and park model units. When we legally noticed this, we did receive one written comment from the DNR regarding the bluff language, and I will touch back on that again, but that was the only written comment that we received. And then at the public hearing, there was nobody in person to comment on any of these proposed changes. When we brought these forward to the Planning Commission meeting, we had a very thorough discussion on each of these different provisions. The bluff definition created some discussion because the DNR wanted us to add in a little bit of a clarifying statement with regard to Lake Superior bluffs. And the Planning Commission felt some of the language was a little confusing. So the Planning Commission recommended a definition for the bluff amendment that was separate from what the DNR stated. After the Planning Commission meeting, I reached out to the DNR about the Planning Commission's recommendation, and she clarified her original statement. So in your packet, you've got an option 1 and an option 2 under the bluff definition. And so I'm recommending the option 2, which is the one that the DNR added after the Planning Commission meeting to address the confusion that was caused through that process. I think definition number 2 is going to add a lot more clarity for everyone. With regard to the accessory structures, ultimately the Planning Commission had a lot of discussion about that, and they felt that that would be better to have a little subcommittee and further discuss that. It led to a lot of what-ifs, ands, or otherwise questions. So very great discussion, and so we may come forward again with another run at those types of provisions to add more flexibility for property owners. Then we had a lot of discussion about park models and tiny homes. So the joy of being in land services is that our jobs are always changing. People are always creating new things to do, and industries are always creating new products. So tiny homes and park models have come on the scene over the last couple of decades. Our office has created a policy that's been applied for about the last 10 years on how to handle these units. So essentially, park models and tiny homes are most aligned to be an RV. Park models are by definition an RV by the RV industry. So it's difficult when people want to bring it out on their property and use it for a long-term residence. So our office was grappling with how to handle that, and so they created standards to expect people to essentially camouflage these units so that if you want to have it on your property long-term, we will give it a land use permit just like a normal cabin, but it has to be camouflaged to look like a cabin. And then with that, it's also eligible for the vacation rental license because it gets the land use permit and is similar, in our view, from a land use perspective, just like any other cabin, able to be used as such. So that led to a lot of discussion with the Planning Commission. It was exciting as far as Planning Commission meetings go. There was a motion to change all that camouflage language and just totally remove it, which I was concerned about because it creates two different permitting processes, an RV permitting process and a land use permitting process with essentially no difference between the two, and that's confusing for everybody. And the individual who wanted that provision has a tiny home and felt that it wasn't needed. So he has a personal perspective on that. And ultimately, the Planning Commission reviewed kind of the full breadth of this process and why our office was recommending what we do. And they voted 5-1 to recommend approval of that language. So that's towards the end of this section of ordinance under 16.03 M, I believe. Yep, M. So overview of tiny homes and park models, so it doesn't get too confusing. They kind of are RVs. They really are RVs for park models. We're proposing to call both of these tiny homes because we in our office do not want to get in the position where we're trying to distinguish what's a tiny home and what's a park model. We're not doing inspections inside or anything like that. So for our perspective, it's a small little thing that's brought on its own wheels and it's movable, much different than a stick-built cabin. So I'm happy to get more into those weeds should you care to, but the big picture of all of that is that the Planning Commission recommended the original language proposed by staff for those provisions. And then there was one other change with the recreational vehicle that I'm proposing. So at the Planning Commission meeting, we have these different types of recreational vehicle definitions. And one of them is the idea you can have a recreational vehicle come out to your property during the summertime. As long as you take it off your property by the wintertime, you don't need a permit. And that we call that the incidental recreational vehicle usage. Our office was proposing to put a time frame around that so it's a little bit more clear to people. And we originally had language that said no longer than 9 months, But then after the planning commission meeting, we had further discussions, and we thought to ourselves, well, who's going to be tracking when that 9 months starts? That's going to create a headache. So we're proposing, again, just a slight modification. Again, this is an option 2 definition in your packet that states a certain time period between April and December, so that at December 31st, our land use specialist knows that they can go out in January. Any RVs out there either need permits or they need to be removed from the property. So again, provides much more clear regulatory guidance for citizens and our staff. And with that, I did put a table in your packet to kind of summarize these different modifications between the Planning Commission and staff's recommendations, and that's on page 42 of your packet, and I'm happy to answer any specifying questions if you'd like.
So Neva, I do have a question about the removal. Permanently off of the land and then bring it back on, like in April for a rental? And where would they go with it? Because it's their land.
Yeah, not for a rental, right? It's just a recreational vehicle, so a person's use. And so the idea is these are a lot of the seasonal type people. So it's, you come up here, you have your property that you use for recreational activities. You take it back home to your property in Winona or wherever else. So we didn't, or people here, you know, people live in town and have land up the Gunflint. So bring it back to your property here, whichever. It's just trying to create a distinction of when you need an RV permit and when you don't. And we've determined that we don't want to require RV permits for people who are just bringing their RV up for just the summertime use.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner White?
So you couldn't just tarp it for the off-season and leave it in place?
It could be if it gets the RV permit, and that's an administrative permit.
Okay.
Commissioner Mills?
As far as the timing of the removal, was that discussed? It's just as far as the practicality of,
Ideally, people would remove it by December 30, you know.
I was even thinking before, because
Right.
at December 31st, it could be quite a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, creating these timeframes is a little arbitrary. Essentially, you know, our former land use specialist, Joseph Ruth, who retired a couple of years ago, he always had the application of if there's snow on the ground, the RV should be gone unless it has a permit. And so that's what we're trying to interpret into an ordinance. But I don't want to get into a scuttle with someone determining whether or not it's snow when it's flurries out. So, and we've had December 31st without snow sometimes.
Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, it's similar to if there's no ice in the lake, the fish house should be gone. So can I make that motion that I said before at this point in time then?
If there's no other discussion, or?
I rehearsed it, so, yeah.
I'll support that.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you so much. And the third item I have for you was a request from the Minnesota Sea Grant, Minnesota National Sea Grant Program. So this email came in last week with regard to a request to advocate support of those programs. Our office works with the Sea Grant Program on various items that provide technical assistance to landowners and ourselves. So most recently that I've directly been involved with was a Coastal Hazards of Lake Superior program. So the Sea Grant funded various professionals, coastal engineers, different regulatory agencies along Lake Superior to talk about the changing landscape along Lake Superior and what we're predicting and all sorts of things. So that's one example. Another is they provide a lot of outreach to landowners for native planting and stormwater, and then over the last couple of years, our office has been working with them on they call it a code audit for green infrastructure. So essentially, they have an expert from a university that specializes in zoning regulations, and she's been helping us go through our zoning ordinance to identify ways to think about innovative ways to address stormwater on private property. So those sort of things are on the back burner that aren't so public, but we appreciate their assistance, and I'd be happy to fill out their support form if that's your board's pleasure.
Okay. Sea Grant they do a wonderful job here because we all live on the shores of Lake Superior, and I've seen them out there doing testing and all that type of thing. Any other comments or questions on this?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to write a letter of support advocating for the Minnesota and National Sea Grant programs.
No second?
Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a time frame here. We have a public hearing at 10, but maybe we could have Human Resources come and fill us in on that perspective. Allison Plummer is going to join us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, we've got a few items on the agenda today. So first one is some jobs brought forth as part of the job description and job grade review process. There are 6 that are included in your packet today, and I'll just briefly summarize those requested changes, recommended changes for today's approval. So for the first position, there's some kind of more changes than are represented in the packet today that I want to talk about. So this is formerly the environmental specialist position. Currently, Tia Parks is in that role up at the Highway Department. So in your job packet is the updated job description. That is going to be renamed just Ag Inspector, the Agricultural Inspector, which is currently a part of Tia's role. The name change in the job description, the job position better reflects the actual requirements of state statute and why we have that position and her duties in that role. That position is going to be transitioning to a supervisory role, and I'll explain how that works in regards to the second bulleted item. But with the change to a supervisory role, the job grade recommendation is to change that from a 160 to a 170, and not just because of the supervisory thing, but just the general review process. Let's see. And to note too, for that position moving to a supervisory position, it has also met the conditions to be FLSA exempt. And then Tia, that position will be removed from the 49ers union coverage as well. The second bulleted job is the environmental technician. So this is technically a new regular position. This was budgeted in the 2025 highway budget, and if there are any questions, I do have County Engineer Haas here. This position is actually going to, it's transitioning their seasonal environmental worker position, which is only filled seasonally during the summer, and this person supports that ag inspector role. That seasonal position is transitioning to a year-round, part-time, right? More so part-time, permanent part-time position, and they will be supervised by that ag inspector role. So I have a new job description, and that, oh, I don't have the grade on that one here. That one, the grade is recommended, I believe it's a 160. I apologize, I didn't put that in the agenda here in that memo. The next one is the county engineer position. We have an updated job description and a recommended change in job grade from a 240 to a 260. Then we have the information systems director, often referred to as our MIS director. Includes an updated job description and a recommended change in job grade from a 240 to a 250. We have our PHHS director. It includes an updated job description and a recommended change in job grade from a 240 to a 250. And then we have our first job family that's been reviewed in Public Health Human Services. We have our public health educators. So this includes an updated job description and then addendums that we are now using for our job family. So you'll see that kind of different format included in that job description, and recommended that that job grade remains where it is currently at a 170.
Thank you on that. Any questions for Allison? Commissioner White?
Allison, for the public, could you explain when we update a job description, how does that process work? I know it's DDA, but like, does that mean that when they're updated, we're finding out that these employees are doing more work than is actually in their job description? And so they should be compensated. I mean, they're doing stuff that needs to be done, but it's not in the job description that they were hired under. So is that the reason that the job description is rewritten to include what they actually do?
Good question. So there's a lot of factors that are involved in this process. And I'll just kind of start from the beginning, explain, I'll try to be respectful of time. But the process, just in general, the process when a job is up in the queue, the time frame, then I send the current job description and then the appropriate review forms that are provided by DDA to that incumbent, that employee, and their supervisor. They have roughly a 2-week period to hopefully keep the time frame moving, to review the job description and provide updates. Are you still doing this? Is there something that's not included? Because jobs progressively change, and so it's important to make sure that the job description now accurately reflects the duties of that position, not the person, but that position. So then after there's that review process on their end, okay, it's good, here's our revisions, they send it back, then I send it forth to DDA for their review. Then we get it back from DDA, say, okay, I've looked at the revisions, here is what I'm sending back to you, incorporating that, maybe some template changes, language changes that fit how they review the job descriptions. Then I forward that back to the employee and the supervisor, okay, here's the revisions back from DDA, please review, make sure it looks accurate. Did you by chance forget anything or see anything that needs to be further updated that maybe was missed the first time? And so there's kind of this back and forth process of let's make sure the job description, once it is in the place that it has everything and is agreed to by the supervisor and the employee, then it goes back to DDA, and then the grading is reviewed using that Keystone classification system. So then that goes back, once that's graded, to the employee and the supervisor saying, hey, here's the grade, and there's an appeal process and a discussion. And once we get the thumbs up that they agree with the grade, then it comes to the board. So in terms of the changes that we see, it could be there could be a multitude of different factors. Potentially the job description, the essential functions of the role has changed, and whether something was left out before or things have been added and modified over the last several years from the last time it was reviewed, that could lead to a change. I would say a lot of the grade changes that we're seeing are due to, first, we added the 270 on the pay table because we were experiencing that compression at the top and not being able to move the top level positions into the proper grades that would also meet the pay philosophy that the county set out. So when Tessa, who I work with DDA, creates the memos of providing the summary of why those positions change, she usually does a pretty good job at explaining, this is why we've moved it. So for the county engineer, for example, for Robbie's position, in her memo, she writes, this position was under-evaluated in areas of responsibility and accountability on the job. And then also talked about, we previously were not utilizing the pay table, the line 270, and so there was compression there. So in utilizing the Keystone matrix, where areas of responsibility and accountability are part of the scoring process, and then removing that cap, that allows that specific position to move. So I don't know if I answered your question. So it's definitely, it's a complex process, and there again are multiple factors that could indicate movement on the grades.
Thank you, and I believe, this is a subject that could be talked about or explained many times, but it's for the voters to be able to better understand. So what is the rate, what is the dollar per hour rate increase from a 240 to a 260, or is it consistent? And I'm asking these for the public who hasn't looked at the charts and have the paper in front of them. But if you go from a 160 to a 170, is it a consistent dollar per hour increase every 10, every 20? every 10, I mean, it's intense, so,
Right. So, no, there is not a specific dollar amount or percentage change for these positions. What we do is we've got our pay table, our pay grid. You've got the grades on the one side, from a 100 to a 270, and then we have our steps. So when there are positions reviewed and a grade is changing, we look at what is the current grade for that position. So let's take the ag inspector, for example. So right now, that position is a 160. Then we look at what is the step that incumbent is sitting at. So maybe that
and the
person-
step, excuse me, is the amount of time that a person has been in that position.
Typically, yes,
Yes.
that's usually what it refers to as years of service. Yeah. So let's say that person is at a 160, that's the grade for the position, that individual is, say, at a step 5. So what we do when that grade changes, and this process was set in place going into the job description review process. So I think between former HR Director Leah Ekstrom and former County Administrator James Yorkie decided to reduce the impacts of the financial impact on the budget when we see these grade changes, is that when a position, the grade increases, we then look at what would be the step going backwards in that new grade that would be slightly higher than the current pay. So in the case of the ag inspector, let's say 160 step 5 is such and such dollar. If we go up to 70, typically you go back steps as you go up grades. So then we would look at, okay, well, step 4 is the pay rate slightly above where they're currently at. We don't do a horizontal change because that would be a much bigger impact. So the reasoning behind that reduces the impact, but ultimately the person is now going to have a longer earning potential because now that they've moved back steps, and it's not meant to be a punitive practice, but now if that person's at step 4, now they have at least one more step to move through on our pay table because our pay table goes through step 9. They will have longer earning potential over years of service if they stay with the organization.
Well, thank you for that explanation, and the hand movements help.
I just naturally.
No, but what I'm saying is,
That's like the group exercise.
yeah, I know, but
instructor and you-
it helps to,
Yeah.
to be able to understand it. But for someone just on the outside world listening in, their eyes have rolled and they are, so anyone has any questions, somebody here will be able, come on in, give a call, and we'll try to explain it better to you or to help you understand. I think the explanation was fine, but it's sort of like teaching someone negative and positive numbers or deny. It's just like a repetition and then using different language. But thank you for that explanation.
You're very welcome. And I want to say thank you for asking too, because I don't, it's a very complex process, especially if you're not a part of it. And it's better to ask questions than to make assumptions about the process.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, thank you for the explanation. It sometimes pictures help to bring meaning to words, especially when they're in the context of things that we're not normally used to using. In my first term, the Personnel Committee made those decisions. And so a department head would come in and present the job description. We'd look at it. We had our matrix, which weighed where we would benchmark that individual. And then we would look at, the pay structure as it was. And both Commissioner Moe and myself, we found oftentimes when we talked about the metrics that was used to evaluate these things, that job descriptions would get rewritten in order to include the language that was found in the metrics so that the pay seemed to change consistent with language that was found in the job description. I would say just fundamentally that the premise under which we operate when it comes to compensation, the decisions we make relative to benefit packages, pay increases, I've always said that performance and loyalty are two things that we should reward. And that's been built into our system. I would say from the public standpoint that when we look at pay increases, which have been significant, and In the last 7 years, we've seen a 61% increase in pay increases, which if you compare that with the cumulative inflation at 28% is more than double. And so, as was mentioned in the public comment period, that those people that are paying a large portion of this, and it's significant, obviously, in budget, it's very difficult when they don't see the increases that are coming to them. And so, again, having been part of the first Keystone compensation study, the results and findings of that, and the premise that sets directions, similar to what Brady's question was this morning relative to where we're going to put, liquor licenses. We need to have a context to understand that is well-reasoned and well-positioned. And my issues with the pay grade, the system, it has nothing to do with the personalities, because we've got some excellent people in positions, and the county benefits because of that. But I think that the premise under which this whole thing is operating is certainly suspect. And I have that context given the process that I was part of before. And I don't like to refer to the process before as though you need to do it this way, because that's what I cling to. But I do believe that there were disciplines in that process that, just like we're trying to build in the credibility in processes, the narrative that informs, as we discussed with Neva, those are things that I'm struggling with because of the context and the perspective that I have. And it's two things. It's where we choose to benchmark our pay grade, and it's how many staff do we need. And if you look at the ag position, that ag position was something that was covered by our highway engineer in the past. I'm not saying that obviously things change in that responsibility with everything else that's growing. We need to step back and reevaluate. But when I look at the environmental technician position, now that's going to make the ag position a supervisory role, which that bumps things up. And if you looked at the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, when it comes to inspectors, and I went to their website to find out, in the 87 counties in the state of Minnesota, and I'm certainly open to, if I'm misreading this, that I want accurate information. But of the 87 counties, 68 of them only have one ag inspector. If they had additional people that were supporting that position, it was listed. And so we had that 78% of the counties in the state of Minnesota have an ag inspector. And there are 16 counties that would have 2 positions, and there are 2 counties that have 3, and there are 1 county that has 4. So if you look at the comparable counties that were used, I'm talking comparable counties to Cook County, 91% of those counties all have 1. There's just 2 in our comparable counties that had the other. So from my standpoint, as a representative on behalf of people that elect me to position, I need to have a solid basis in the information that informs my decision when I support these things. And I want to be very respectful of that, and certainly of the work that you do, the good work that you do. And we've seen change because it just gets to be more things that we have to handle. I just want to be sure that change is well-reasoned, and I want to be sure that the premise, the basis under which pay is assigned, starts from a good place as well. So thank you for listening.
So we have 2 areas of motions. The first one is what we're discussing. The second one is going to be the extension. We could do them separately. So if there's any further comments, I'll ask for a motion to approve the job description and the job grade updates.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Support.
Any further comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We have 4 yeas and 1 nay. And then we can move on to the extension of the resignation date.
I have a thought. Wondering, I believe that the approval to hire Paul Olin was pulled from the consent agenda, which relates to this item.
Okay.
Which one would you like to address first? They're kind of,
You could do
Tied.
Mr. Olin
you
first.
want to talk about? Okay, all right. So on the consent agenda, gosh, my language. I need more, drink more coffee. So on the consent agenda, which we can discuss now, is a request to approve the hire of Paul Olin as maintenance worker 3. This request and this hire would backfill the resignation, the position that will become vacant with the resignation of Curtis Laboda. Laboda, his position is based out of the Tofty shop and operates the grader. So most of the highway locations, Tofty, Hoveland, a little slightly different here in town, typically have maintenance worker 2, which is a truck driver, and then the maintenance worker 3 is the grader operator. So this would fill that vacancy, soon-to-be vacancy, which we'll talk about. Time to be determined as to when it will be vacant, to backfill that position.
Okay. Any comments from?
Is there a specific question about
Well,
hiring Willie?
my question is, it's more than just this particular new hire. Since we know Paul has not, if I remember what I heard, he doesn't have a lot of experience driving a grader. So he will be learning under Curtis. That's for the extension. So does he get hired as an apprentice to be, there's no time frame. He gets paid and hired at the full amount, even though he doesn't have the experience, not just the experience, experience and knowledge to actually do the job, but he gets hired at full pay.
With all due respect, I'd push back on that quite
Okay.
a bit. He's been trucking for how many decades?
Several.
Several decades. So.
But
So
what about the
one-
grader?
One
That's the big
component
thing.
of the job is grading, correct. The training that we're trying to establish, and both these things are kind of tied together, is, in theory, Kurt would be down there a day or two a week. So Willie would then be in the grader the rest of the time. And so that experience is also reflected in where we're proposing placing him as far as steps are concerned. We just talked about steps in the table. And so you can see, I believe we're starting him at a step 2, so towards the bottom. So you can't ignore decades of experience trucking, not to mention all the other equipment experience that's there. So while, yes, the grading component is part of that job description and that part is lacking a little bit, he does have experience in a grader plowing snow. But the grading of the road part is what we're hoping to, with Kurt staying on longer, kind of leverage all that knowledge that's there.
Well, thanks for that clarification. I mean, I don't know who Paul Olin is at all, but I do know Curtis, but then that goes to other hires that we get in different departments, like Public Health and Human Services, that there is a learning curve for all the hires and before they can actually do their jobs. So everyone just gets hired and they get on-the-job training at their full rate, correct? Okay.
And I can provide some more information on that. So, as long as someone meets the minimum qualifications, the minimum they would typically start off is a step 1 on our pay table. There are certain situations where someone may not meet those minimum qualifications, but has the skill set, the education, and maybe they just need that years of experience to get to meeting those minimum expectation or minimum requirements. Man, tongue twisters today. So there are situations, we see that most often in Public Health Human Services. We saw it once with a truck driver because he was waiting to pass his CDL test, where we do have a grade actually below step 1, which is like a step 0 or starting wage. We call it like a training wage. So if we do bring someone on into that trainee capacity, to provide them the experience to get to those minimum education experience requirements, then there are situations where we may utilize that. But most people, if they meet those minimums, then we would start them at step 1.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I would say that, we're entrusted with the responsibility of filling position and serving the community, and I think organizations, counties certainly, we hire capable people, good people, and the qualities that exist in those individuals we recognize, and we're willing to entrust responsibility to them, and then where we come alongside is equipping them to do their jobs. So if somebody has the aptitude and the demonstrated abilities and those things that fall in line with the area that they're going to work in expertise, I think that there's some areas where we'll call it weak, but we'll put a polite quote on either side of that. We come alongside because we believe that inherently they possess what we need, and we will train them to do that. And that is the culture we want to create. Is we don't want people afraid of what they don't know. We want to come along and equip them so that they can be competent in their positions.
Any other questions? Then I'll hear a motion to approve the extension for Curtis Labota's resignation date to June 2nd of 2025.
Support?
Any other questions?
Oh, sorry, are we talking
That
about?
hiring Willie? That's what we just talked about.
Paul Olin's
Paul
hire?
Olin.
Sorry,
Oh,
Paul
sorry, we
Olin.
did.
I just want to make sure we're.
Yeah,
Yeah, if
talking
there's-
about the right thing.
Oh,
First, we have.
Right now, we're making a motion to extend the resignation date, and then there should be another motion for the hire.
Oh, okay.
I was ready to talk a whole bunch about that, but that's fine, have at it.
okay. This is for Curtis. Okay. Any other questions or comments about that? Commissioner Gamble?
It was, thank you, Madam Chair. It was in the packet, but just to say that we discussed it in the Personnel Committee, and that it was also in our packet to inform our decision that the cost of that is approximately $7,000, and that's coming out of the reserve from the Highway Department, just so the public is aware. That informs the decision we're making to support Kurt staying on.
Anything else? So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Supported unanimously. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to hire Paul Olin as maintenance worker 3.
Support?
Any other comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank
We're
you all.
getting pretty
Thank you.
close to our public hearing. Would you be willing to take a little break and then come back? Because the next topic, our next topic, hiring a county administrator, will take a little bit of time.
Yep.
So.
Madam Chair, I think we could fit in
Oh.
the revolving loan fund
Okay.
request.
If you'd like to do that, we could do,
If,
sure.
Yeah.
You know the time factor on that.
Yes, I think we can do that.
Okay.
Gary is here to answer any questions. You correct me if you think we won't get through it.
Fine.
Anybody?
believe we will.
Okay. So this is the request for the Heights revolving loan agreement. We've previously approved this on November 26th. It's for a 36-unit multifamily housing project. The request is for $250,000. This was approved, conditional on the bank commitment, other funding sources, et cetera, the interest rate, market value. But since that time, the lead bank for the project has changed, and the terms of the loan with CCREF have changed. So the revolving loan committee is asking the county board to approve the terms for the county loan to mirror those of the bank loan to CCREF, which is what we did previously, but the terms are a little bit different now. So the terms include interest-only payments for the first 2 years. This is not unusual for commercial loans. It's unusual for us, but not for commercial loans, and if we follow it, we're following their practice. It supports the project in the early years. It's a variable interest rate for the first 2 years, the amortization schedule based on a 25-year term, and we would follow the balloon payment requirement if the bank so chooses that. It's a possibility. Not likely, but it's a possibility. The project itself is financed with 52% debt, including $4.4 billion from the lead bank. The members of the Cooperative Credit Union is 750, or that's the $4,750,000 from Northland Foundation, the $250,000 from Cook County, another $200,000 loan from Lot Lender, and $25,000 from Birch Bark. The other 40% of the project, 48%, is financed by $975,000 of grants and $2.9 million from the local lenders' equity. So part of this approval is an intercreditor subordination agreement that requires, in the event of a monetary default with respect to the lead bank, the credit union, that we not receive payments on our indebtedness, just our regular monthly payments, until the lead bank is paid in full. What this does, it's the same principle as a, if you have a mortgage on a property, the lead bank, we're going to be in the second or third position. So this just puts us in the third position behind the credit union and Northland Foundation, the higher lenders, as we would be in any other type. We've had these large loans before where we've been in third or fourth position. And so it's not unusual in that sense. It's just that the personal guarantees are involved in this case rather than a mortgage. So you have an unusual intercreditor agreement to just state that fact that we are in that third position and that we wouldn't come in as a first position demanding our payment. So with that, if you have any questions for Gary, otherwise, this is just a request to reapprove the loan with these terms to follow the lead bank.
Commissioner Gamble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sat in on the revolving loan, my first attendance. I had sat in on it in my previous term as a commissioner. And a couple of things that we discussed in that is that the history of the revolving loan and the integrity of the group in decision-making and whether there's been default or not. I think the confidence of the due diligence on the part of the committee is to be commended. And the other comment was just understanding in this decision that $250,000 would be tied up with just the interest only, that money then would be out of the pool that we would no longer have. But given the fact that the housing has been a high priority for us and the low exposure on our portion of that with a debt ratio that is basically in the 50s, that's a good position. So just like a bank, when you go and ask for a loan, they're going to apply their matrix to evaluate credit worthiness. And in this case, the committee felt that it was good, other than the one issue of taking that money out for a period of time.
And it's not the whole 250, it's just the principal part of that payment.
That's right.
For 2 years.
Yeah.
And the principal payment is fairly low for the first 2 years. Interest is high in the beginning of a loan, so it's not a huge amount of that 250 would have come back anyway during those 2 years.
Yeah.
So
Madam-
most of the committee didn't feel that was a strong reason.
Right. Madam Chair, then I would make a motion to approve the loan terms of the lead bank for the Heights project, including the interest rate, organization, or amortization period, interest-only payments for the first 2 years, any balloon payment if so required, and to approve the attached intercreditory subordination agreement.
Support?
Chew on that.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion passes unanimously. Good work.
1 minute.
Okay. BKV, we're going to get to you. We're going to put you toward the end so we can give your full attention. Okay. So it's 10 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock, and we have our second solid waste area for today. So Brady, you can continue with that.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a continuation of what we've discussed regarding the North Shore Waste potential bonding, and this is to look at a solid waste management fee. And before you could, so this isn't approving any waste management fee, but before you could approve a fee, the first step is to establish a service area, and that's what this public hearing is today, is to establish the service area. And the request is simply to establish the area as the entirety of Cook County. So that is really the question before you today, is to establish that service area as the entirety of Cook County. That's simple. And then to then also set then a public hearing for an ordinance to set the fees, if you were to set the fees for the next board meeting on March 11th, 2025. So just to set the area and then set the public hearing for 10 a.m. on March 11th, 2025, and then to consider that ordinance on that date. So we're following the calendar and the steps as set out by our bond attorney.
Any further questions or comments for Brady?
I would think we can start our public hearing. You can open it up to the public.
We'll now open this up for public hearing.
I'll speak. I've got the resolution and the report from the Brady Powers. First, I'd like to say that on Brady Powers' report, it says it's to fund the construction of the solid waste transfer facility. There's no mention of what it's funding in the resolution. It can be used. It doesn't state the purpose in the resolution. That's one thing. The second thing is it's a blank check. This, by putting it into an assessment and a service area, you avoid putting it in the levy, which is more transparent, and every person in this county is going to pay, but the levy should be what dictates what's spent on the transfer station, not an assessment set by maybe a whole new department. There's no end to this resolution. It doesn't say when it's paid for, it's going to go to the levy. It doesn't say when, it doesn't say how much is going to be paid on this transfer station. That's all up in the air. It's a blank check. And I think it's unfair taxation to set an assessment like this. It should be done with the levy. If a person owns a $50,000 vacant lot, they're going to pay 1% of the value of their property for this assessment. If they own a $500,000 property, they're going to pay 0.01% for their assessment. I've talked to a couple commissioners about the new apartment building with 51 units. One commissioner said it would be, each apartment would pay. One commissioner said the building would pay. It's one tax parcel. It's an unfair taxing situation. So I would oppose the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good morning. I'm Bruce Martinson from Schroeder. I am guessing most of you didn't know that Schroeder Township being at ground zero of a coal-impacted community, was requested by Minnesota Deed to pass a letter of support for the $800,000 grant for the transfer station. I did write this letter of support. This letter of support was required and not optional for Cook County to receive the funds. My issue is not with the transfer station, but with the equitability of the fee structure. I think Judy brought some good points up, but the assessments are equitable within the user groups, but not between the user groups. Lodging places, bars, and restaurants fill the cardboard and recyclable trailers, especially with glass bottles. Brody, an employee at the Tofty transfer station, estimated half the plastics and glass bottles and a quarter of the cardboard come from the bars, restaurants, and lodging associated with Bluefin Bay down in Tofty. Yes, the $50 per residential partial paid by each condo unit would cover their part for lodging, but not the restaurant. Other motels under individual ownership, just paying $100 having many units, also would not be paying their equitable share. Tim Nelson would be a good source on quantities of recyclables and trash generated by businesses. I was told by planning and zoning that no one in planning and zoning was, contacted about the quantity of recyclables, trash generated by residences versus businesses. Getting the better end of the deal, I wouldn't expect any business to show up here today to complain about the proposed fee structure. Cook County can just review the Minnesota Department of Health lodging permits to find the number of rental units. Please reconsider the equitability of the fee structure today or revisit in the future. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to address this? Then I'll have the public hearing closed at this time, and we can have some discussion to the comments. Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the comments. Bruce, having been on the board, to understand the difficulty in trying to find where, equitability is. We had considerable discussion in trying to look at it, and we had Bob Thompson come back with running some scenarios for us. My recollection, we did have some discussion about where does the trash come from and the recyclables, just to clarify that. And certainly when we have been looking at this whole transfer station project, and I came in, late on the project, the issue of where's the trash coming in, what can we anticipate, and how do we create a fee structure to help support this? And there are some unusual things certainly in this regard, given the fact that we're establishing a partnership with a private party, and we're fortunate to have a place that takes our junk, and as any entity in operation is subject to requirements by the state, we're in a position where, because we have so much trash, that we cannot continue to move forward in our present state. So we're trying to find a way that provides both now and in the future and is equitable. I think that public input from businesses, whatever else that can help inform our decision is important. How we go about doing this, the more that we attach just a response to the levy issue, the more that we have what we will call mandated requirements that are built into our levy, it's going to be very difficult to manage levy. I also agree with hidden tax that we don't want to circumvent levy just from appearance's sake and then create a hidden tax. But we do want to find an equitable way to fund this. And part of our discussion was maybe we just do it through a fee structure so that the people that are bringing in the recyclables, the trash, whatever, that'll be built in as part of that. And there are some complications with that that are governed by what we can and cannot do as well. But I appreciate the comments, and we are struggling to try to come up with a way that we feel is equitable.
Commissioner White?
Yes, in rethinking, we had decided on commercial and private. I mean, and that included vacant lands. But then when reconsidering the volume of waste that is generated by commercial buildings, is it indeed fair? I mean, should not a business that has many people visiting, many in bars, I'm not speaking well here. Perhaps we should go by beds for the resorts and have some sort of a fee that better reflects the amount of waste that is and will be produced by these different commercial entities. Now, a commercial entity that is, like, I would imagine a store would not produce as much waste, like a retail store, as a motel would with a bar or a restaurant. So I'm just thinking that, is it fair for $50 fee per property owner for each of your one's parcels, vacant or not? I find that is acceptable, being one of these property owners. But then, if you are a business and this fee does not cover the tipping costs, you will go to, with your bags and your loads of cardboard, you will go to the facility and you'll pay for those amounts that you are now bringing in. The $50 and $100 fee is for supporting the building, for getting this building up and going. And Brady could probably better, in fewer words, explain that. But every one of us, if I pay for six parcels, and I live on 2 square inches of it. But then if I were in Bluefin, the Bluefin owner, there's just something that's not fair there. But I would expect if I go to when I go to the recycling center, I'll be paying to get rid of my trash. So I don't know if you understood that it's for the facility, it's not for the individual amount of trash that is produced.
Yeah, that's the idea behind, not just the idea, but that is the purpose of this fee. There's nothing built into this for operations, for handling of trash. It's for the creation of the building, which is considered a common good. But that doesn't rule out equitability issues, but it's not directly related to trash.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just like with the housing, we just passed a resolution in support of the financing with the housing, and that was based upon just coming alongside and supporting, in addition to many other sources of revenues, to get that housing project off the ground. And this, with the money that has been generated from industriousness on the part of the people that want to see this happen, that we are coming alongside as a county to support this because we see value to it. And as Brady said, the equity thing is just how we see that. If you look at the business park, that right now, and this is through levy, that taxpayers are paying to fund that enterprise. There are multiple enterprises. The funding that came through the 1% monies that funded several projects, including the Y, once that indebtedness is ended, that the language in the agreement and the commitment on part of financing this building can certainly have an end date, so that it's not something is perpetuated, it just simply because it's intended to finance. So all of those things that make what we're attempting to do here protective of both the provision of what we're looking for and the benefit, and protecting the public as far as ongoing exposure are important elements, and we appreciate the refinement that comes with your voice, so thank you.
Commissioner White?
And so the county owns the building, or we own the property that it sits on? Is there,
We will own the building.
yeah?
The North Shore Waste owns the property. None of this is settled, but it could be, we're talking about a lease of the property in order to build the building, and then lease or create a management agreement for them to operate it, is the basic structure.
Did everybody hear him? Yes.
And it's, yeah, it sounds complicated, but in talking to Ellers, our bond advisors, it's something they deal with a lot, so.
So we've been asked to approve then the setting of the solid waste service area for March 11th. Before we do that, are there any other comments or questions?
Madam Chair, and just to clarify, it's my understanding that we're setting that as the solid waste area, but we're not making a determination as to how we're going to.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, so it just establishing the service area, but not concluding the approach financially.
No, and the resolution is a proposed resolution based on what we know at the time. This resolution, that you could approve after the next, you have to have the public hearing first, then you could approve that resolution that was attached, but that's not set in stone either. So that's just what we knew at the time.
And Madam Chair, as a follow-up, I would just say so that it's clear for the public that this intention is to establish the area.
Yes, that's all.
And that the issues that have been addressed here are still issues that we can receive input on, and we would encourage that from anybody that wants to help inform our decision moving forward, so we can create as much equity as possible in how we fund.
Mr. Sullivan?
I'd like to make a motion, Madam Chair, to approve the establishment of a solid waste area and set a public hearing on enactment of an ordinance for March 11th.
Any other questions or comments?
Support?
Commissioner White?
And I want to reiterate what Commissioner Gamble said, that personally, I need to hear the people out in the county, their opinions or their perspectives, because in the conversations that I've had since the last meeting, it opened up avenues where I didn't think about enough. And so call your commissioners, anyone, because I do not just represent District 1, I represent the entire county, everyone that lives here. And it's very helpful to hear from the people that live here and have their experiences. So thank you to all of those that have contacted me.
Commissioner Mills?
I would ask that the motion be amended to include a time.
Thank you. I would amend that with 10 a.m. as suggested.
And I'll support that.
Okay, we have amended motion and second. All in favor, signal by aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously, and I'm losing my voice, even though I'm not talking very much. But we need a break, so we'll take a 10-minute break, and then Allison can come back, and we'll finish up with the county administrator hiring process, and then we will go to BKV. Good morning again. We're resuming our meeting, having a little short break. And I'll turn over our next topic to Interim Administrator Rowan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today, we're joined by Pat Malvin with DDA, as well as Allison Plummer, our HR Director, and a couple requests in follow-up of the last time the board met and discussed this. Due to the change in finalist candidates, re-adding the higher scoring semifinalists, as well as introducing a new semifinalist, one of the requests today is to push out the date of the in-person interviews a week, and so that tentative date is March 12th. And then the other consideration for the board over the weekend and yesterday, the board had the opportunity to review the same information as was provided on all of our other semifinalists for a new semifinalist. And the board can have a discussion today and decide whether or not they would like to invite that additional semifinalist as a finalist for the in-person interviews. Pat or Allison, is there anything else you'd like to add to how I framed that up for the board?
Very well stated, thank you.
Commissioner Mills?
I would like to include the next candidate into the interviews.
We've all had a chance to look at the new candidate, and personally, I would agree with you too. Anybody else have an opinion on that?
I feel very similarly, Chair Storley.
Yes, I'm fine with that too, but I would like to explain that when we picked up the next two next two candidates that were down on the list that we didn't originally choose to go with, they were actually selected by the same number of commissioners as the other ones that we originally selected, but it was their ranking, were they in first, second, third, fourth, or fifth place, that gave them a ranking number by DDA, but there were 3 or 4 commissioners that originally were interested in the next two down, so it's not necessary that we're really not going to be looking at people that were meeting our criteria. It was just the original ranking system that threw them into the position that they were in. So, and I would say, yes, the next one that we were just presented with seems to be a possibility also.
Okay. Commissioner Sullivan?
Madam Chair, a question I have is, we talked about doing the interviewing on the 12th, and are we going to evaluate our candidates on the 12th, or are we going to do that in a fashion as we had planned the week previously, where our board decision would be made the following morning?
We did discuss that, and I think for us to give a overnight thought about it and then meet again in the morning, the next day, seemed to be pretty unanimous at that time. Is that still something that all of you would like to do? Commissioner White?
And we'll be allowed to talk among ourselves in that time frame about the individual candidates, or do we have to have an open meeting to talk about them?
We'll have an open meeting. It'll still be referred to as numbers, not names.
Well, once we get to the
No.
point where you're talking about those who are being interviewed, their identity is public information. You can have discussion about them, but it would only be in a board meeting where the public can observe or see. So you're not able to talk outside of the board meeting about the candidates. It would be in the meeting.
Right. I think I was still in the mood of only addressing them as numbers, but right, the next day there'll be names. Commissioner, or
Yes.
Administrator Rowan.
And just to reaffirm the process that the board's talked about, if we do go forward with the 12th, and then the board would make their decision on the 13th, during the 12th, we're also be live streaming these interviews so that the public can see it, as well as encouraging department heads to either watch and participate, or not participate, but be here, and then convene and collectively give some feedback back to the board on the 12th to help inform that decision. I just want to reaffirm that is what the board had talked about and is intending to have us do.
Commissioner White?
Will the public be able to sit in on the interviews also?
It's a
Yes.
Yeah, it's a public
Okay.
meeting.
Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, just to clarify, I mean, if we had an outline so we understand process moving forward, that would be helpful, but if the department heads sit in, that if they convene following and convene,
Yes.
and then if that information, if we want to give them the opportunity to submit it the next day for our consideration so that they have some time to discuss it. I guess that was my thought, just like we want to be able to process it. I think the expectation, we want to know their input, but I would say that we would like to get it that next day, not necessarily the day of, but that's whatever the board is.
That's what we had discussed, the next day.
Okay, very good.
Would you like to set that meeting on the 13th? I know previously we,
Yes, previously we had said 8:30, if I'm correct, Pat.
correct?
Right.
Yeah.
We have a board meeting the day before, the 12th.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess my recommendation would be to begin interviews at 8:30 on the 12th, and then at 8:30 on the 13th, begin our deliberations with the input of department heads.
Any other comments or questions on this? Commissioner Gamble?
Maybe just to clarify that if the public has the opportunity to observe the process on the 12th, that if the public wanted to provide input so that there's a connection between their impressions and their reviewing or not, whether that's normal and customary, but that would be a question, I guess, for Pat. I would welcome any input if people are going to observe and then they have impressions, that would also go to inform our decision.
How do you feel about that, Pat?
Certainly, what we can do and what we have done with some other recruitments is that we have a feedback form, which, asks the individual several questions, and then they can provide that feedback, back to me. Typically what we do is we'll then type it up, and then we'll have a document to present on the morning of the 13th that will contain citizen input. I know the department heads, I believe, are going to be maybe doing it face-to-face with you versus in writing, and I'm not sure how that would work with members of the public, but I would recommend that they provide you with written input versus face-to-face.
So the public actually could send us impressions too. How do you collect? So who would they send it to you?
That's
the
That's the form he's
That's the
referring
form.
to.
Yeah. Okay.
So, Madam Chair, I would say that,
Typically,
go ahead.
sorry, the one thing that we try and do is we try and control what that input is so that, it's not input that is outside of what we're allowed to consider. For an example, if someone were to say, I like candidate 1 versus candidate 2 because of age, that's not something that we make decisions on. So, obviously with staff, I think they have a better understanding of what they can and cannot, and that's certainly something that I will coach them on. But with the public, I think it's helpful for us to have kind of a filter there to make sure that, you know, their input is steered towards what's acceptable. That's my only thought.
Right, okay. Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my recommendation is that when we go to the 12th, that it's, that there is a clarification to the public that might be watching, to let them know they have this avenue to be able to participate, and that their feedback is welcome, and that it will be compiled in the context of what's allowable under normal, you know, practice. And then, but we want to make sure that, however we can, that we reinforce that so that they know they do have a voice. The other thing, what we did with the participation on the part of department heads is that we had a representative, so that the discussion that ensued following the interviews on the 12th, that those were put together and summarized, and then a representative came to the board to share those. If we do that, as opposed to having all the department heads in on the deliberations on the 13th, it's whatever. But we did have that input through their discussion, and then when they digested it down and synthesized it, it came to us as a recommendation with a representative from MAT team, whatever it is called now.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Question I have for you, Pat, is for people that are members of the public who are watching a live stream of the interviews, can we make the form available online in advance so that they have that and can email it or print it off and drop it off here at the courthouse?
Sure, I can certainly work with Rowan and Allison on that. That would not be a problem.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anything else? Anybody has ideas? Commissioner White?
One question, so we would not encourage the public to pick up the phone and call us?
You know, certainly that is an option, but I would encourage them to put it on paper, just because I want to make sure that we're not steering into areas which are not considerations for the county administrator. And again, goes back to talking about age, any issues that are really not tied to the job description.
Commissioner Gamble?
But if you do get calls from individuals, certainly you can take their information, just avoid the topics that I think I've provided you previously in that League of Minnesota Cities document that outlines what is and what isn't acceptable when you're considering individuals for your county administrator position.
Right. Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pat, is that something that you could draft the succinct language that could be used when we enter that meeting on the 12th, so that the public is made aware in the context of what you're talking about?
Certainly, I can share that information.
Just something
yes.
that addresses what you're saying, is that we welcome your input. Just be mindful, given state statute, this or that or whatever. But if you just draft something short that our chair could use.
Yes, no, I could certainly put that together, and we could include that with the feedback form. If that's posted out there on the internet for individuals who are watching from home and want to provide some input.
Thank you.
Anything else for Pat? And Pat, do you need anything else, or are we good?
We are good. I will start putting together the schedule and doing reference checks, etc. So thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you so much, too.
Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay. BKV Group. I'm going to turn this over to Administrator Rowan, who's going to get us going on this wonderful topic to discuss LEC.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today, we're joined by BKV and Associates. We also have a couple members of our design team, and they will provide the full board with a presentation to show the work that the design team has done this far. I'll talk a little bit about the purpose and the reason for the Law Enforcement Center expansion project, and where the design team, who again is made up with the county administrator, the county sheriff, commissioner representation, facilities director, and then BKV and their whole team, and as recently construction manager Johnson Wilson, and just to give the full board an update of where we're at in the process, as well as have a little conversation and some direction on how the full board would like to see us move forward with next steps. And with that, I'll turn it over to Henry.
So it's on their screen. Perfect, here we go. It's worth the wait, I'm sure for you here. So thank you for inviting us. We'll get through this quickly. I know we all have deadlines about noon to get out of here to get to other things that we all have to do. So here we go. So our agenda really has 7 parts to it overall. So it's a full piece here. We'll go through the mission. We'll go through changes that have happened since we were last in front of you. Site plan. Then we'll go to the closed session portion, so we can show security things that we don't want to show in the public, and then come back for exterior image. You'll see we've got some samples and things, so a little touchy-feely pieces there. There is a piece on your capital improvement plan and what's been bonded and other things that might be considered. We want to go through that checklist in detail and see if we can get some concurrence on what you think is important out of that grouping. And then a quick piece on schedule and bidding. So it's a full period of time. So I'll just get right to it with the mission. Really, there were 4 or 5 critical things as this board and previous board had decided on this project. One was, and the top thing was security and functionality. The sheriff's office and the vehicle sally port, and a whole bunch of spaces really operationally were inefficient and lacking in certain spaces that were required, like evidence, let's say, for example, from all of that. Also part of that and all the other master plans we had put together, we had talked about moving the Emergency Operations Center out of the community center into this facility as a piece, which also moved the emergency manager out of this building out back with the sheriff and the rest of the team there, for example. So a lot of parts and moving pieces that were going on that kind of made it all go, but all basically to support the mission of the sheriff's office and to serve the residents of the county overall. So and the big piece was making a good investment in what we were doing, and that's part of why we wanted to talk a little bit about the capital improvement plan and potentially moving things forward that have been bonded and other things that might be of interest to you as we come through there. So since we last did the master plan for this and signed our contract, really a couple big things that happened. As we started the process of really looking at the building, your existing law enforcement center was built at a different time with different codes, and as we had proposed initially a 2-story building to make sure we maximized parking out there, we found that we couldn't actually build a 2-story building. When you look at the the snow drifting that would happen on your existing building, that would have been a problem. The loads and how the building was built was not built for that condition. So we looked at, what would you do to be able to fix that and still keep the two-story, and it was just kind of crazy. You'd have to basically peel the top off and start over and reinforce beams and things like that. So that wasn't a good option from that. So we quickly redid the scheme. Actually works out fairly good. The big issue was with the parking, just to be sure that we had enough for the functions that were happening from the, and we verified that with your team and committee overall on that to make sure that happened. There is potential, if some overflow was needed, to get up higher into the other areas of the highway department and things like that, if that was ever needed. Right now, we're not planning for that. So the big advantage is the square footage went down a little bit. It was a more efficient building, so it saves some money that way overall. And so we think at the end of the day, it's a good piece. And I know Rowan had advised you on that piece, but I just wanted to reiterate that. Getting Johnson Wilson constructors, I always say contractors, but constructors on board, obviously a big deal there. That's helping us make decisions as we come through. So, for example, looking at the different wall types and being able to get the labor force here to make that happen. And then overall scheduling, a really big deal there. So we're really happy to have Dean and his team working hand in hand with him and everybody else. And then, the CIP that keeps coming up here. So you'll hear plenty about that. But it's really taking advantage of cost efficiency, maximizing resources, minimizing future disruptions. So, if we're replacing piping, let's say, that goes into the jail, we want to be sure that's all coordinated and done as we're putting a new boiler in, for example. So things like that. And then kind of your, all tying to your strategic long-term planning as we come through that. It's kind of funny when you look at the drawings, it's hardly noticeable except a little bit at the bottom, on the new one-story addition, it kind of comes out into the parking lot a little bit. Other than that, kind of the same area, kind of the same zone overall with that. So the site plan itself, organizationally, not much change except for that little bit of the parking that is impeded there. We do have enough parking for the sheriff's full staff if they were all there at the same time, so it gives a little bit of relief there. And then there is enough parking in the existing lot to take care of the EOC and any community events that may happen in that room. Much like this room, it's a multi-purpose room, so people can use it in those areas. Our biggest deal with redoing the site is right now everything slopes right into the building, so we'll be blasting most likely a little bit in that area to make sure the new parking lot fits in. You kind of see on the diagram there where the lighter part of the driveway coming into the facility, that's kind of the existing curb line, let's say, of where everything is. So everything north of that where it says new staff parking, that's kind of that area that'll have to be blasted. So we'll be making a recommendation at the end of the week to Rowan and regarding some soil borings that we'll need for that area, so we can know exactly what kind of rock we have, what the bearing capacity is, and I'm hoping it's really good that we don't have to build a retaining wall, that the rock can do the work. So we'll find that out. That'll obviously affect cost one way or the other. So that's kind of a big deal there. And then we're also looking at directional signage, so you can kind of see the north is up in all of our drawings. The northeast corner of the new addition, see a little red mark there. That would be some new directional signage, so as people are coming into the driveway, that'll, point them in whatever directions we're showing them. But, there's a distinct difference between the law enforcement center door that gets you to the jail and to the sheriff's office on the public side. And then on the north side is really our entry point for the staff, and then public EOC and community use for that room. So that's kind of that zone. And then you can see further down to the left, the vehicle sally port access, which is much bigger and allows a ambulance to get in, which is important. And then there is a maintenance room at the very end of the building there to allow for all the equipment that's needed in lawn cutting and snow blowing, those kinds of things as we come through. So we did get soil boring numbers, so we'll get that to Roan this week. And then site survey, that's been approved already. We're waiting for the snow to go, so I'm rooting for a couple of more warm sunny days so that we can get that done. Hopefully in the next week, they can get out here and do that, because we need all of that to make the rest of that go. So that ends the public beginning piece. If we can do what you need to do to get to the next part, and then we'll get to the other room.
Okay, so for the public to know that we're going into a closed session, and this is part of the Minnesota section subdivision 13D.05, 3C, to consult and look at future architectural plans.
Back at it. So we now wanted to kind of show the exterior of the building and what a one-story building looks like, and yes, go ahead.
I think we need a motion to
Yeah.
transition
sorry.
from the closed session to the.
Yeah, I guess it would be good.
Yeah. So just,
We're back after our closed session, and we're going to have a motion to reopen our board meeting right now. Did
So
you want to
moved.
do that?
yeah.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
You got the
Motion
grace to
passes
go
to
ahead.
reopen.
Now we're official.
Mountain Dew won't get you through unless you have that, yeah.
I understand. I'm on my plan commission in my own community, so we know a little bit about it, but I'm anxious for you all here, so.
Commissioner White, did you
Anyway,
have a
we,
question?
Excuse me, Henry, I would just like for the public to understand, the reason we were in closed session is it's the law, it's all security driven about what the interior of the law enforcement center plans are. And it's not a big secret that we're building something like this, but it is mandated. I mean, this is security, and that is why it was in closed session. So we know. So if you want to buy one of us off, maybe. But anyway, but that's the reason why. Public, pay attention.
all right. So to build on everything else, you've seen the site, you've seen the parts the public hasn't been able to see, but we do have our exterior of the building. So we've got Shane here with some samples. We've got some views. You want to talk a little bit about it? Yep.
All right, so what we were looking at for this building is right now we're at the end of SD and we're going to be getting some pricing done with Johnson Wilson. So we have a base option that we're looking at, and what you see here, the base option is precast concrete panels. And the reason we're going with that route for the base option is that it's very fast to enclose the building before winter. If we do run into any winter conditions, this stuff can be all installed at any time of the year. And what really helps with the overall schedule is that since the constructability period is so quick when you do get the precast, that it does save time in the back end of the project. So that all helps with our timeline on when we want to occupy this building. So what you're seeing here is basically the north elevation. So on the right side is the sally port. And then when you get towards the middle portion, that's a larger conference room area. And what you're seeing here is some different materials. So what you can do with precast is, the nice part about precast is it's very durable. It's all just one large piece of construction with insulation in the middle. And what you can do is you have different finish options. So what we're showing here is, because the existing building has brick, we're looking at doing a couple options of thin brick. And then there's what they call form liner. So the bottom portion of this wainscot area, instead of doing traditional masonry, which is very expensive and very hard to get laborers to perform this up here and really anywhere in the region, is you can get stone look, which is like basically a stamped concrete that's stained. Same thing with that sally port. We're showing like a CMU block. Same thing, it would be a stamped concrete version of that. So looking at a couple different thin brick options, form liner, stone panel, as well as a potential CMU outside. So just showing you a variety of things that can happen in a 12-foot panel. You can have a variety of finishes within that panel. And then there's no extra trades on site. It's just all tilted in place and installed really, really quick. And what you can see here is, so this is where the existing building connects to the new addition. And what you're seeing here is kind of the deputy office area. So what we're showing is, we worked with the sheriff on some of the different window configurations, and the one that was most desirable was to have, instead of the existing windows like you see now, where the visual point when you're sitting in your chair looking out, you look at the mullion. We're looking at raising the mullion up, but it's still having operable windows up high with the awning windows, so we can still get natural ventilation to the space, but we also get that nice visual and light coming into the space. And you can see with the different colors of brick we're starting to look at as ways we can integrate and sort of mesh with the existing building that is there.
Does that color permeate that surface material? Or is it something if it?
No, so actually, I can show you over here.
If you're at, it's full depth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's full depth, yeah, that's.
If you chip it,
Yeah.
and it's red,
Yeah.
Still red.
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Yeah, so here's a good panel to show you what that looks like. So the through color is the pigment that you pick, and then these are different levels of sandblasting that you can do. But what also happens is they can embed thin brick into the panel, so it's not something that's stuck on the outside of the panel, it's actually embedded into the cast. And then same thing with different brick looks and concrete looks. There's a lot of different pieces you can do, as well as even form liner wood panels. You can get some texture in there and stain it. So there's a lot of variety of options where we can make it look like a brick building. We can show stone. We don't have to have all those extra trades on site, and it's just all ingrained in one panel.
Thank you.
And these are just some kind of elevations showing the heights of how we're doing things.
Just all flat.
Yeah.
But it gives you a sense that we're not changing the height of the building because we can't, except for the Sallyport area in the back.
So just the way we're kind of tying in the structure, we're basically just showing the addition about a foot higher or so from the existing, so that we can tie in the parapets correctly. But then the only spots we're bumping up right now is, if you go to the next elevation sheet, you can see where we're trying to tie some existing look from the existing building, which has the main entry bumped up a little bit. We're doing the same thing on this new addition, as well as the Sallyport. The reason that portion is higher is because we have a 14 by 14 foot overhead coiling door, so that just allows us to, we need to bump the structure up a little taller to accommodate that.
Got to be able to get that all-terrain.
Yeah, the all-wheel drive ambulance.
Yeah, ambulance in there, so they're much taller.
And that helps us kind of break up some of the pieces of the facade too, so that it's not just one linear long building. It helps create a little variety and interest in there as well. So these are some wall sections. So what we're looking at is, again, that precast concrete wall system is the base bid. And then what we're also doing, just to verify that the costs are similar as far as timeline, schedule, and also constructability, is the second alternate that we're gonna have is basically looking at doing a CMU wall with, what am I trying to say? So, yeah, precast wall, or precast wall is the base option, and then the second one is CMU with insulation and then a fiber cement panel, and then still having a wainscot at the bottom like we showed on the existing building and the new, so that we'd still have some masonry there. So we feel that because of the time and labor and costs and everything with that, with the alternate, we really feel like the precast is going to be the best option for the project, so that's why it's our base bid. But we want to show due diligence of that, there are other options, but let's show what the pricing and schedule are for those so that we can justify that our decision makes sense. So that's part of the SD exercise with that. And then the third wall section, which we want to touch base on, is when we're looking at that east elevation of the existing building, we understand that there are currently insulation and moisture issues. So what we'd like to explore in the SD pricing is basically to put new insulation in front of the existing brick and then a new cladding rain screen system in front of it to fully alleviate all these issues that you've been having with moisture and air infiltration. And then we would provide new windows as well as part of that.
And it'll be an option, so you'll be able to make decisions as we go forth. The other way to look at it is, can you inject more insulation in the existing walls? And there'd be some limited success perhaps of some of that, but it'll be an interesting piece.
When we do go and look through those options, it'd be really helpful to know the cost difference clearly, but then also the energy usage and that cost projection, so, thank you.
Yeah, that's an important piece. Your staffing's your number one cost in a building like this, and number two is energy, so it's really important. And because we're looking at re-roofing everything, you're gonna be adding insulation up there also, so that benefit alone is going, makes you want to do and reclad that wall. The other walls seem to be, working properly. So, at least from what we see, and that brings us to the capital improvement plan. Hopefully, you've had a chance to look at this in advance. The big deals really are about cost efficiency. With the project of this scale, happening up here, you want to be able to take advantage of having the labor here and the materials that make sense, and you have quite a few things that are already approved for your bonding that's available. but some of it not yet. So hopefully we can kind of cull those to a point of where you think we might be looking at, and we can then, Dean can start thinking about how to price those. You already have a dollar value from your last review from a couple of years ago on that. So it's just all strategic, and it's all up to you. None of these parts really are part of our contract. The only thing that we were asked to do is the re-roofing as part of our contract to begin with. So the bonded list, there's about $500,000 worth of items that we would have that we looked at and were recommending. Some of it was scheduled earlier. Those items have not been complete. So, for example, the underground propane tank as an example. So you can see there the roof under exterior enclosure. So there's, about half of that number is really in the roofing of the re-roofing of the building. But, that's a good one. And then a couple of different pumps and things that we probably can accommodate reasonably with what we're looking at overall there. So I'm assuming you might be agreeable to all of these at this point, since they're already bonded. So if that's the case, I can go on to the next slide if you tell. Otherwise, ask questions or other things.
Considering the cost of that re-roofing, we're also looking at another project that has a rubber roof, and so I'm trying to
Yes.
think, they do need to be replaced after 20 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Are there options? I know it requires a slope and all that, but are there options for a sloped metal roof?
Not on the existing building. We just don't have any structural capability of doing that. It's too long of a span to put like a roof truss over it. It's a possibility on the addition. We've kind of explored some of that. The committee's thoughts overall were flat roofs are better from that standpoint, so that's kind of the direction we were given at that point.
Okay, thank you.
A standard warranty is 20 years. You can go out as far as 30. I mean, it's a cost, it gets built into the cost, don't get me wrong, but we'll just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And with the rooftop unit and everything we're putting on the roof, for us, maintenance-wise, getting on the roof, a flat roof, much easier. We have leaks and issues like that with the metal roof. You can't get on them. EPDM is really nice to work with, and it's a perfect application in this.
Thank you, Brooke.
Okay. All right, the next two slides then are the non-bonded items that were in the capital improvement list. It's tried to organize them a little bit by the types of things that are going on overall. Couple of there's a lot of HVAC pieces and parts that all would fit with what we're looking at. As part of this project, we will be replacing the boiler that exists. You're at the end of the life there. That's an important piece. And then what ties to that is all the piping that goes back to the various areas that control the volume and comfort within the jail and other places within the building. So there's a lot of that, as you see, like the bottom three items on this sheet, for example. A lot of those kind of tie to that, but your boiler is your big piece at 154. So that was scheduled for 28. So, within a few years when the building would be done, so it'd be better to get that done now if we can, but it's not bonded yet at this point. And then the same with electrical pieces and parts. Some of the site it's a good time to put a new layer on the parking lot, for example, since there'll be a lot going on, and so there's all kinds of things happening in these areas. And then generally on the next page, it finishes with everything, to the mechanical ventilation systems, a lot of piping and valves and things like that that all tie together with the boiler, and those pieces, upgraded UPS at that point, and then a little bit on the cameras, upgrading some of those that haven't been, and the bigger piece is a generator and the capacity. We're still verifying final capacity needed for the addition, but it looks like that might be something going on that we might need to do there. It also may affect the size of the underground propane tank, because we think there's a requirement with propane to have a separate tank, but our team's still looking at that. So there's a little bit going on there. So essentially, these items that are total a little over $1 million, which I know is a lot of money, but these are all items in your capital improvement plan, just not funded at this point. So if there's a sense that the board would like to do these things, we'd like to incorporate these into the project and into the design right away. They can always be articulated for separate bids or something also. So there could be the main part of the building and, get some pricing there. Makes Dean's life a little crazier, so he's probably going like this and I'm not looking. Yeah, stop talking, but if there is, question on that, but we'd obviously have to design it and do things too, so there'd be.
If nothing else, we'll update your budgets to
Yeah.
be more real. I mean, some of these are pretty far off skewed, but at least you'll have more real numbers like the generator's gonna be significantly more than that.
Yeah.
I mean, but at least it gives you a more realistic look at today's market.
So I guess the question at the end of the day are, as you've looked at these, are these items you would like us to include with what we're doing to take advantage of that? Or are there things that you kind of like a consent agenda pull out and not consider from that standpoint?
Sure. Yes. And just the only other piece of context I'd like to add, we've talked about it a few times, but aside from the cost associated with the deferred maintenance and the schedule that's aligned with it, we've talked about savings and having mobilization, having these trades already on site, having these workers already here. We've also talked about minimizing the disruption to the law enforcement center, to say that it's a 24/7, 365 shop, and this is, to say the least, going to be very disruptive to what they do.
Yes.
And so to get this done and then to come back another couple of years and to be looking at making significant changes again would add disruption to that operation. And so just from my perspective, I think that should be part of the consideration.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You mentioned like with the roof.
Yes.
As long as we're here, let's do the whole roof.
Yes.
And I've always believed there's been things that have been sort of agitating with buildings but you don't have the money, the resource right now to commit to it. But when you get to a point where you're addressing other issues, now's the time to do it, which is sort of what you're speaking to.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we look at it in the context of all of the things that inform the decision, which is the inconvenience, having things because we're remote, having
Yes.
it up here and available to do it and get it done. It's just a matter of looking at all of those things as in the context of prioritizing this when we're trying to balance the fiscal responsibility with what makes sense
Yes.
as what we do. So I guess that would be my position in the context of evaluating on all of these different matrix, so to speak.
Okay. Another thing I'd like to add to that too is it's the same kind of route where we're being proactive in the repairs. And we can plan, we can make the repairs correctly and more cost effectively than being reactionary. If we have a sudden propane tank leak on a 12,000 gallon underground propane tank that we don't know the condition of, I mean, it's gonna be a much larger issue than if we don't plan ahead and do it the way we're planning on this way.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The other thing usually that drives some of these decisions is it's going to be cheaper now than later. I don't really like that argument, but the fact of the matter is that when we look at that evaluation relative to cost now and then is what about what we're projecting as being a long-term solution, and that's a matter of knowing futures when you're projecting where we're going on these things. And so if you can support it through that type of perspective, it justifies then, well, we didn't know, but we didn't look, kind of thing, so, yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys identifying these items, and I think it's really helpful to put them in the list, part of the project. I think being proactive, I understand the dislike for the cheaper now versus later, and you have to weigh that also with just what's the interest rate on the bond for it versus the costs later. So, but just based on history of other projects and other counties, it seems like if we can address this sooner rather than later, it's more cost effective. But again, prioritizing those costs, it can be tricky, but
We learned that a few years ago when we did some replacement, like the windows. You don't do windows like they did years ago, right, Pat? Commissioner White?
And with the impending, the tariffs on Canada and Mexico and Lord knows where else, nothing is going to be going down in price. It never really seems to have in construction anyway. There was one year when plywood was really cheap, but costs are never going to go down. They're not going down. I mean, they're not going down. And labor never goes down. And we are not going to become closer to anywhere. We are here. So I recommend, it's going to hurt now and it's going to hurt more later, but going for it, so.
Pat, did you have something to offer too?
I just wanted to get this on record since it's a public meeting, but I wanted to expand a little bit about what Rowan was saying, that, the disruption is not only just for our staff. The disruption is also going to be for public safety services in Cook County. There are going to be times when, this is what we're working on. I mean, we will have to move our entire dispatch center to a remote location to get this done. So doing that will have an impact on public safety if we don't do it correctly. If we have to go back again because we skipped something that saved a couple $1,000s, that will have an impact on public safety in Cook County as well. I may not be here at that point, but I would rather see it get done correctly now. And if it costs a couple more dollars, then, that's the price we have to pay for public safety sometimes.
Very good point, thank you. Commissioner Mills?
yeah, I really appreciate that perspective, and the fact that it's part of our capital improvement plan already. We're gonna be spending it, it's just, or that's the plan at least, it's just now or later, so, and I think what you're saying as far as the disruption with public safety and staff and just the efficiencies, it makes sense to take care of it sooner. It's an opportunity. An expensive opportunity, but it's an opportunity.
But we've looked at everything in the capital improvement plan. We didn't select everything. Because some of the things, like replacing plumbing fixtures, for example, we've been able to look at those and say, it's on the list, but it's not needed. The use factor or just because it's aging out doesn't mean it necessarily, needs to be replaced at this point. There's no code issues and things like that. So we've been trying to be very, very good with the money that's potentially there. So.
And those are the things that, they don't cause a disruption if they do fail. We can change out fixtures, And the other thing I wanted to kind of clarify when I meant it's cheaper to do it now than later is if we have some of these items we could have a catastrophic failure with. And to mobilize everybody to come up and do a propane tank, or we blow glycol lines and we're, that's where they kind of really have us. And that's when things get really, really expensive, when we have to mobilize stuff in the middle of the night for emergency catastrophic failures.
Commissioner Sullivan?
I just want to say I personally support everything that's on that non-bonded list, and I think we should, as a board, support that for public safety, to avoid the disruption, and for long-term sustainability of this facility. It's going to be here for a long time, so let's do it right.
Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you. Yeah, it's, the long term is a hard thing. You're on the verge of retirement. So in all of your experience, going in what we see and what's our lived experience. And so I'd appreciate your opinion in the projections of what you've done in your career and how we've seen that match up with that long-term, phrase that we use.
Yeah, the items that we've selected as a team all tie into what we're going to be doing to the building anyway. So we're going to need more boiler capacity. Boilers are at the end of their life, things like that. So everything we've put together makes sense from that standpoint. I can't sit here and tell you that, I wouldn't recommend these because of that. But I think you do find the value, and with Brooke being new to your team and all of that, and a young version there, he's going to be maintaining these buildings, and I think he's going to be the type of guy that actually takes care of that, and as you plan for the future, that's always the key, is the maintenance of it all. So if you spend the capital to get the building back into the proper shape based on the improvements that we're talking about, and the maintenance happens and you support that, this will serve you and the community for a long time. It's I think it's from my experience, the boards that make that investment, my own community did that 25 years ago on my recommendations, and it's served them well, and they've been able to, just normal maintenance and things like that really help those things. So that's what my years of experience brings to it.
As a follow-up, Madam Chair, the reason I asked the question is that when there's an unknown, and this is why I referenced your retirement.
Yes.
That experience over years, the knowledge you gain becomes wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And so we seek wisdom which puts things in context.
Yes.
And a lot of times we can put together presentations that the glitter, the unknown, which we haven't qualified, in many cases, attracts us to something. And so what we project, if what we project is credible as much as we can, then our experience is going to realize expectation meeting met.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a scripture that says that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
Mm-hmm.
And so people place their faith until the points that the substance of things hoped for is realized.
Yes.
And this community has had many things that have come to us of hoped for that are predicated on good reasoning and have not met expectation, which tends to erode trust. And so it's, incumbent on us to make sure that we're asking the right questions in the context of what we can know and appreciate the information and the perspectives that help inform decisions.
Yes.
But this is why I'm saying that when you look at things, the number one thing is the best thing about these decisions, in my experience, has been this. The number one thing that is most disappointing has been this. And so that's basically the root at which I'm asking the question, given your experience.
Yeah, and to me, the having the foundation underneath everything in the mechanicals and electricals and all those are important investments. We have to make some for the addition already. So to change out the boilers, for example, and do it right now as part of this project instead of waiting till 2028 is a smart investment. And yeah, it's not on your in your bond right now, but those kind of investments the public doesn't see, but those are the ones that cause Brooke the most heartache at the end of the day, because if that goes down, you're not only inconveniencing any potential people that are in the jail, but you've got dispatch, you've got all kinds of other things that are going on in there, along with the sheriff's full operations that you can't afford to be down. So I think my experience tells me, if your base is good and your roof is part of that base always, those are the right investments. I could care less about putting new colors in and new carpeting, and those are important pieces, and you can schedule those and do those as time goes on. But these kinds of things you can't do easily, and particularly with the labor sense and having the tradespeople up here to do it. I think that's what my experience tells me. That's why we're recommending it. Otherwise, it'd be pretty simple. We just build the addition, and life goes on, right? And you'd figure out how to do these projects as I'll be long retired. But I think this, for me, my experience tells me, if we can get it done, let's get it done and get there. And that's what makes sense to me overall.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your work. Appreciate all of the samples of the building pieces. And as a board, I think we're going to wait for the next report from you on some of the surveys and some of the ideas that we need to make further decisions on. Any other comments or questions for PKB?
Is there anything else that you need direction from us today?
No, if you're good with the list, Dean will be pricing those to see what the real level is from when that was done a couple of years ago. We'll put a proposal together to get that moving, because there'll be another, in about a month, we'll be back with the pricing that Dean will have of all of this. We will then also, I was going to share the overall schedule. Again, depending how this thing lays out, our goal is to be done with phase 1 of construction documents at the end of May, so that we can bid this in June and begin construction, July, with foundations and blasting and, all kinds of fun stuff. It's accelerated, and it's ideally you'd want to do this in one big package and get the whole building and know the price for certain. So there's a little bit of risk involved there, but it's also part of the big risk. So we're still trying to evaluate whether we could actually get everything done, but I want to be sure that we can get this thing enclosed with a precast, and everything we can get those walls up quickly. The timing works with the people that we've been talking through in the industry on the walls. So I think it's possible to get this thing done, which means if it's enclosed, we can start finishing the interior and get this thing going to, get you in the building. So when you look at the moving and occupancy, we anticipated moving in maybe in, March, April timeframe of '26 with the full addition. And then you would start doing the work inside the building to connect pipes and other things that need to be done as part of all of that. So we'll be back in about a month for that board meeting, and Dean will be the star of that show. And in the meantime, we're gonna move on forward. That's the direction we've been given to get these things going. We should be able to get soil borings and things done here quickly, and if the snow goes away, we'll get to finish the survey work quickly, and then that should all fit in line with the time frame that we're looking at.
Okay, Commissioner Mills?
It would be great too, as we get these updated numbers on the capital improvement list that's been identified, to compare them to our current numbers to
Yes.
see the difference in cost over that time. It'll give
Yes.
us some perspective on what if we wait another 2 years, or what if we wait 4 years, that sort of
Sure.
thing, so, yeah.
I've done some sampling on those numbers, and some of them are pretty close, and some of them are way off.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's just the market and the vision, and now generator, for instance, well, now you're including an extra addition onto it, which, when you guys were planning that, probably wasn't in the
Yeah.
long-term plan, so.
Yep.
All right, we're done.
Okay.
Thank you
Thanks
so
so
much.
much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hope you make your flight.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. We can move on to any other administrator updates, Roland?
We've covered them enough today, thank you.
Sure. Commissioner reports are meeting. Does anybody have anything they need to share with us?
I have a lot of things to share, but they can wait till the next meeting.
And we will, coming back from the legislator meeting too, so.
Absolutely.
That will be lots, yes.
The only thing to say is the pasties from the hub for their fundraiser, they were really good, but they were small. But they're really good, so.
They aren't alone when it comes to making things smaller.
So we have a list of meetings coming up, correspondent memos, and sales tax comparison through December of '24. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Oh.